How are you?
I'm well, thanks. And you?
Good. It's so good to see you. We've been doing a lot of trainings and some together, and we get so many questions after our master classes and even in person. I just wanted to take a little time with you to kind of swap some answers and maybe share with folks who might tune in just some of the skills, some of the basics, and the important reminders about facilitation and meeting management. So thanks for taking this time.
Sounds good. I'm happy to be with you.
Yeah, it's great. And so we have a series of questions that have come in. I think we'll just go through some of them and let's just share what we know about them and help folks out. And so here's the first one.
Okay.
What's the best way to encourage engagement from those who haven't prepared for meetings, aren't interested in the content, or are struggling to contribute in a meeting?
Oh boy, isn't that a challenge?
Yeah.
Who wants that? That's like triple whammy. I would say if people are not engaged, I wonder, do they under are they're not motivated. It doesn't sound like they're motivated to address the issue at hand, whatever it is. And I think it's really incumbent upon whoever's leading the meeting or the facilitator to provide the context and an understanding of what is the problem that we're here to solve, or why should they care about this. It's really about telling the why and what's happening in the context within the organization, within the team, perhaps within the industry, within the governmental regulations, whatever it is. What's happening that makes this a burning platform and important for the facilitator or leader to hear from everybody on the team about a certain topic. So even if no one prepares and something is pulled together, ad hoc kind of thing, I think it's really important to start with, why are we here? What's the problem? What's the context? And just make sure that everybody's on board with that or understands that. Because when we work cross-functionally, people don't, they're busy doing their function, and the things that you are concerned as leader about, it might not be on their radar. So convening with context and the problem that we're solving is really important.
Right, which goes to having desired outcome for your meetings, knowing why you're gathering and publishing that, but also not just as part of the invitation to the meeting, but taking that first 5 minutes of a meeting to set context, which includes this is why we're here. And if someone, maybe even giving them the opportunity to say, is everyone prepared to enter into this today? Is this the best use of our time right now, or do you need to go and research? I know some folks are planning meetings with 5 or 10 minutes at the start for that preparation time. I know you're busy, so we've built an agenda where you can take the next 5 minutes to read the materials that I sent out or to gather the information that you need. Here's our agenda. You're going to be on it at this point. And so who needs some time to prepare? And then you just give it to them right then and there. I think another thing that can happen is, I mean, I'm intrigued by the phrase from the questioner, if they aren't interested in the content. So one of the things that we talk about at Interaction Associates, of course, is stakeholders and why we're inviting people to the meeting in the first place. And we often invite people to write those desired outcomes from the point of view of the participant. And this is exactly what we mean. If someone isn't interested in the content, then do they need an invitation to this meeting in the first place? Or is there maybe another way to share the information that you feel like they need to have? When we think about it from the perspective of who we're inviting, it might allow us to give them the gift of some extra time. They don't have to be here for this. They don't have to be sitting in a meeting that doesn't interest them or that they have no buy-in. Of course, going back to what you were saying, Beth, providing that buy-in, well, now we get into managerial type of stuff, helping people know why they're motivated, being a leader and encouraging them to prepare and making them accountable if they don't.
Right, exactly. I love it. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think, sometimes it's funny. I just finished a workshop yesterday, a 3-day essential facilitation workshop. And when we kind of closed up, it was funny to find people thinking like all roads lead to preparation. I mean, really, a lot of the things that go wrong in a meeting, if you prepare in advance, a lot of them can be prevented.
I totally agree. And we have that saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of intervention. All the things that we can do before we begin the meeting. And maybe that's part of what's gone wrong with the culture of meetings, like why we're so frustrated by them. We assume that everyone knows how to run a meeting or knows how to even prepare for a meeting. But where was the class in business school or whatever that gave these fundamentals that Interaction Associates provides? There's going to need to be some work from management and leadership on creating a culture of meeting and meeting preparation and meeting facilitation. And so not only do we provide that, but now we're having this conversation. People need to think about, oh, and I think I've said this in front of you before, about becoming the hero of their company, because if you can make meetings work well, oh, you're going to be very popular.
Yeah, we used to say meetings are a microcosm of the organization's culture. And so if the meetings are inefficient, if the meetings are not productive in any way, or whatever goes wrong in a meeting is happening, it's part of their culture. And so
Hmm.
if you get your arms around the micro, the little what's happening in the meetings, you can really help shift a culture.
Yes, for sure. So let's talk about a couple specific types of meetings or meeting situations. One of the questions that came was about executive level meetings. Do we have any specific advice or best practices when you're facilitating something at the executive level?
Yeah. And the question is facilitating versus presenting. And I can say that if you are presenting to a C-suite executive level group, you have a deck ready to go, but you don't show the whole deck. The deck is basically reference. You always start a presentation with the bottom line. What is the key message? If it's bad news, you start with the bad news. If it's a proposal, you start with your bottom line proposal. You don't build the argument and go through slide after slide after slide and build to the crescendo. You actually start with the proposal or whatever it is. Start with the bad news, and then have your deck available, because then you're facilitating after that. Because executives like to work through, think through your proposal or whatever it is, and they're going to have a million questions about it. Your deck is to provide answers to those questions. You should anticipate and plan all that out, but don't start clicking through a deck, because it's just people get impatient with that. Have you ever heard the expression, don't tell me how to build the watch, just tell me what time it is? And that's what happens. They start.
Yes. Right. And so knowing the audience is extremely important and understanding what their needs are. Now, that's great and wise advice for presenting. And I want to dive in a little bit to the facilitating part because as you may in fact be invited to be a neutral facilitator for an executive group. And I get a little bit from this question that maybe there's that sense of, through the chain of command or the organizational tree, maybe you're not sure you have the countenance to be there and to make it happen. And so my suggestions there would be to reiterate. I mean, we already talked about taking those first few minutes of a meeting in order to set the context. That context includes what the roles are and who's in charge of what. And the role of the facilitator is to make sure that the process happens in a way that reaches the desired outcome. And reiterating, I'm the person here who's going to make sure we stay on time, for example. My responsibility here is to make sure that everybody has a time and the ability to provide input. My goal here is to make certain we get to and then state the desired outcome. That's not just context for the participants. For a facilitator, that's empowering yourself to take on that role. It's reminding everyone in the room that you may interrupt even the CEO or even someone who is higher up on the ladder than you. But that's your job for the next hour. And when you state that out loud and get agreement on it, is everybody aware of their roles? Is everybody okay with what may happen? Thank you. And maybe even a little joke about, so offer me a little grace if I push us on the clock, or just something that allows everyone to know you have a job there, and they're going to thank you for doing it. And so empower yourself.
I think also when you're facilitating executives, you have to be pretty subtle about how you intervene sometimes.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's just a nod or I love standing up. To me, when I want to take control, when I'm facilitating and something's going on that I don't want to occur, somebody's going on too much or there's conflict, I simply stand up. And
Mhm.
that can be a very powerful intervention, and it's very subtle. So it doesn't look like I'm interrupting. It doesn't look like I'm talking over somebody or embarrassing. You never want to embarrass or shame anybody. Or, at the core of our work is the respect for human dignity. So how subtle and low key can your interventions be? And so that's why when I'm facilitating, especially with the senior level group, I make sure I have a chair at the front that allows me to sit down when everything's going well, and then to just stand up when something's occurring that I don't want to occur, because it can completely change the game of the conversation just by standing up.
Yeah, I agree. And practicing questions that return the power to the speaker. So instead of oh stop, we need to move on. It's are you ready for us to move on? Are you complete in what you have said? Is this something that maybe could go offline? You're asking them permission, but you're really giving the power back in a very subtle way, or at least they believe that you are, so that they're like, oh yes, of course, let's move on. They've made the decision, but everyone in the room knows that you brought that decision to bear. So
That's right.
it's some subtleties there. I like
Yeah.
that phrase for sure.
The simpler, the better. The one other thing I would say is that sometimes I think saying the person's name and then thank you
Mm,
really is like, David, thank you.
yeah,
Who's next? What else? And then
great techniques for
he
sure.
just, again, it's just like subtly gets it off. Or it's not, David, thank you. It sounds like you really are passionate about XYZ. Thank you.
Yes, for sure.
You know?
Yeah. It's interesting because you and I have these skills. We've been doing this for a long time. We're kind of experts. Occasionally, though, I wonder, have you ever sat in on a meeting and seen a facilitator struggle? And that was actually one of the questions that came along is, how to address dysfunction when you're not facilitating, when you're in a room, whether you're an expert facilitator or you're just someone who's getting a little impatient. How best to address that when you're sitting in the group instead of being tasked with facilitating the group.
If you are in a meeting and the facilitator or the leader is struggling with some dysfunctional behavior in the group, I would help them out. Or they're at a strategic moment. Say you're in a meeting and it's not moving forward, or there's trouble. You could see it. By all means, I say facilitate from your seat. And that means just simply saying, hey, I have an idea you might want to consider. Offer. Or, hey, I'm noticing that we only have 10 minutes left and we have another whole desired outcome to get to. Or just something very, it's an offering, and it's a gentle way. Because sometimes from your seat, you can see the dynamics better than if you're in the front of the room, or metaphorically, or facilitating or leading. Sometimes you can see it better from your vantage point, whatever that is. And so sending out a lifeline and providing a helpful, like, hey, I have an idea. You don't have to take over. Just say, I have an idea you might want to consider, or I'm noticing this or that. All that gives you entree to help the leader or the facilitator who's struggling.
Absolutely. And every facilitator I know will recognize what you're doing, especially if you're using some of the shared languages. Are we still working towards our desired outcome? The timing, how is timing going? Facilitators will recognize what that is. I think another aspect of this question, though, and we can start to get into this a little bit more, is addressing true dysfunction. What about dysfunctional behaviors? And so, kind of on even a broader scale, maybe we could talk a little bit about just, I don't know, is it etiquette that we're talking about? Is it business presence? What is this sense that when we get into a meeting, sometimes we're just not quite sure how to interact with people anymore, or we let certain personalities sort of take over, or we just submit to, hey, this is going to not be productive, or that person's having a moment, etc. So let's
Right.
talk about that. Let's from the same context first, not as a facilitator. If you're in a meeting and there's a sense that something is becoming uncomfortable, or let's just say dysfunctional, to quote the questioner, how then to sort of intervene and help a facilitator out?
I think two things are at play when there's behavior that you don't want to have happen in the room. And I think the two things that I think are at play are either you get pissed, like this is like you get angry, like you get offended, and you can start wanting to feel defensive. You feel defensive, or you lose the functioning of your brain because you're intimidated.
Hmm.
Somebody said something, you thought, oh, I didn't think of that. I don't know how to handle this. And when you are triggered or upset in your brain, your brain, you lose functioning. You can't think clearly. You
Hmm.
really can't. So I feel like in those moments, it's really important to have grounding techniques. Like, how do I ground myself? And I ground myself by saying, having key phrases that buy me time. So it sounds like you have a concern. Tell me a little bit more is one of the key things I have in my pocket of phrases. Or I can appreciate that. Tell me more. What
Yeah.
do others think? I get the attention off of me so I can manage my own anger if anger is the thing. But
Hmm.
I also give my brain time to calm down
Yeah.
and get some, cogent thoughts going in
Sure.
my fear or trigger.
Yeah, and I think that that's such a great place to start. I did a training yesterday too, in which we backtracked and said, "Wait, step one is, am I okay? What am I bringing to today? Have I sorted through my self-awareness and my emotional intelligence to know where I am?" And what I love about what you just said, Beth, was that you've provided a technique, which is that being curious, asking a question, allowing more information to come. It's a simple shift from how should I respond to what more can I learn? What more do I need to know before I respond? And then, of course, you're balancing that with that gives me time. I can do a check-in, etc. But both things are happening. The being curious, the getting more information, the continuing to explore what's happening, ask a clarifying question, something that's open-ended. Love that as a way to just sort of get ourselves in the space we need to be. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Anything else you would add about those moments when you don't, what do you do when you don't know what to do? That's the thing.
Well, exactly. And I think that um, definitely looking at the big picture, so often what I find those triggering moments are about something specific that's happened, a detail or oh, well, I was going to say accusation. Sometimes it is, an accountability moment. Okay, so what do I need to do to frame this as part of either the bigger picture for overall or the bigger picture for this meeting? I understand that that's true, and we're addressing that. In order to get to where we're going today, though, I want us to stay focused on this specific thing. And I've had folks lately who that question comes up about what if someone is just persistently disagreeing? What if someone is just saying like, no, I can't do it that way. No, I don't see it your way. What I encourage too, what I say big picture is going to, well, what are the overall values of the group then? Okay, so can we agree that we want meetings to be productive? Can we agree that we're going to be respectful of everyone? Can we find a core value in the room or in the company that leads us to a solution to why we do something a certain way, or why one process is preferred over another? And then, of course, what I had to concede too was sometimes if someone just wants to do it their own way, maybe you need to listen and see if they can convince you that their way is worth it. And maybe just worth it for them, but maybe that exception is okay. Why are we standing so firm on what it is? So those are my kind of where we are. In the specific, are we still driving towards the desired outcome of this meeting? In the general, are we still working to the principles and the values of the company? And then, if needed, is there, do I need to just relax and sort of take on what else is happening there?
Yeah. I think whenever you're intervening on a difficult or dysfunctional behavior, right, or triggering behavior, whatever it is, I think the underlying principle for us at Interaction Associates is around respect for human dignity. We've
Absolutely.
all made mistakes in meetings. We've all talked too long or gotten too passionate about something or not talked enough, whatever, had a sidebar, whatever it is, we've all done it. And you want to assume the best and bring out the best of everyone. And so I think we were talking earlier, and I think one of the things I think about is say what you mean, but don't say it mean, right? So honesty and calling things out is okay, but like with respect and just with the other one, I would say that a teacher once told me was tell the truth without blame or judgment, which I love that too. Both
Hmm.
principles for me to help get at that respect for human dignity part.
Yeah, and I think that actually in a social situation over the weekend, I was having a discussion with friends about the difference between nice and kind. And as a New Yorker, we were kind of talking about whether or not New Yorkers are kind but not nice. And what did that mean? And what it means is Things like being direct is kind. Things like helping to reframe is being kind. Keeping things on track for a group purpose in a meeting is being kind. Sometimes nice can be a little soft or a little demure, and that's great, except when you have a shared goal, except when you have a desired outcome you're trying to reach, except when you're trying to find the balance, as we talk about, with the results of the meeting, the process of the meeting, and the relationships in the meeting. All of these come into play. And if we're sacrificing results because we're just being so nice because our relationships aren't very strong, then that can be a problem. That's one of the frustrations with meetings is there was no result here. People got to talk and got to spill and got to have their say, but what was the result of the meeting? The process didn't go well. Sometimes that process revolves around that dignity that you're talking about and doing it in a kind way, a way that says, on behalf of all of us, we're gonna stick to our agenda in honor, and you can make certain that you say that kindness on behalf of the person that you're intervening with. I love what you said. Beth, thank you. I can tell that this is really important to you. And so that it gets the attention it deserves, I want to make certain that there'll be follow-up or a different meeting about that. We're going to stick with our goal right now. Not what you're saying is important. And I don't want it to get short shrift because that's not what we're doing right now. Help them understand that you're empowering the ability for a true outcome to their issue by deferring it or by finding another way to address it.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And there one thing one of my colleagues once said, this idea of like sometimes you have to let somebody empty their cup for they imagine we both have two cups full or three-quarters full. Somebody has to empty their cup before they can be receptive to another idea too. So sometimes even just letting them go a little bit and then serving as, I think, a wingman, or a wing person to like, if whoever's doing the difficult behavior, a lot of times everybody in the room sees it. And
Mhm.
by kindly intervening, you're actually helping that person out. It's counterintuitive, but true. You're actually doing them a favor, a solid, you know.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And so, Beth, as the facilitator, though, again, the person who's been empowered to keep all of this on track, what are some of your best just sayings or interventions in some of these different things? Let's see if I can, if it's okay, I'll test you on a few that I
Okay.
hear the most common.
Yeah.
Certainly, the person who just won't stop talking. Uh, you see the timers going on, whether or not what they're, and then they start repeating themselves. What's a technique you would use in that case as the facilitator?
Well, when somebody's repeating themselves, they often don't feel heard. So I would do something like, David, it sounds like you really care about our strategy with regarding marketing for the next quarter. Thank you for that. We heard some important key ideas about how we may approach that. Thank you. Who's next? So really but I let them spill their, cup a little bit. I don't just intervene right away, but thanking them, moving on and
Mhm.
summarizing.
Yeah, and that goes to a lot of just solid listening techniques, that mirroring back things that you've heard, the paraphrasing, so that exactly what you say, they're assured that they have been heard. And sometimes I'll even do a check-in with the room. Did everybody get that? Is that something, just to let them know that it's not just me who's heard, but that the room is with them and we can move forward. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Mhm. What about the interrupter? Some of this one came up in some of the questions they had. Different, maybe even personalities in the room, but maybe sometimes roles in the room, and there's a lot of interrupting or cutting off. How might you create harmony in that situation?
It's funny you should say that because I was on jury duty and this is where it came up most profoundly for me in jury duty recently. And this juror number one, unfortunately, had a big opinion and a giant personality. And when we got to the other jurors, he kept interrupting them and telling them why they're wrong. So at first it was gentle. Hang on, hang on a minute. And we called each other by the number. So I said, one, hang on a minute. And then let five finish. He did it again. Hang on. You get bigger and bigger. Hang on. Number one. Right now, we're going to let five finish. So I get kind of more intense, but gently, always with a smile and like inviting out. It's, well, hang on, I promise you we'll get back to you. So their need will get met, but we're going to do this right now. So I really do the same approach, really. Acknowledge, interrupt, acknowledge, and say, hang on, really set it down, lay down the law around it, because if you don't, they will not stop.
Right. And I think that the concept that you're bringing here is really important, which is the fact that there's escalation. And it may not, we think of that as being, oh, the participant is maybe escalating, but actually the response from the facilitator has to escalate as well. And that's actually something that some people might be afraid of, that, oh, well, we're going to go through the roof. But in fact, the matching of the intensity is a vital part of communication as a facilitator. And it helps the other people in the room. One other thing that's happening there is you're building credibility and trust throughout the room when you're taking on your role. And so when you respond, and even when you have to escalate, you're providing, oddly, it's not getting worse, it's getting better. You're providing an even stronger sense of safety in the room and a stronger sense of control. Understanding too that, and we had a question that we're not addressing directly about like strong disagreement, that escalation can go everywhere to, hey, let's take a break, to, I think maybe we're done here today. You know what? I don't think we're going to get to our desired outcome. I'm going to shift our decision making to a different method rather than this meeting thing, which is kind of falling apart. But escalation is continuing to respond to what's happening, because whether it's innocuous in kind or just a personality thing, or whether it's something more difficult like a bullying or type of situation, they're waiting for you to give up. They're waiting for you to stop intervening so they can do what they want to do. Your role and responsibility as a facilitator is to keep going until that balance is reached and the room is able to function in a way that gets you all to your desired outcome. And I promise you that, as difficult as it may seem at the time between the two people where it's happening, you're creating a great deal of trust and good faith in the room when you do it and take on your role.
Agree 100%. Well, this has been such a nice conversation, David. Thanks for engaging me with this, and I look forward to the next time.
Me too. Yeah, great to see you.
Bye-bye.